Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Yes, friends, it's time for Tiger Claw Radio. Oh boy. Never gets old. Alright, so the Evercade is leaving its mark on the Panzer Studios here, and we're about, say, 3 weeks away from getting the Panzer, my desktop computer that I do everything on, getting that replaced. And so we're right on the verge of like big time Christmas season shopping and stuff like that. So it's kind of quiet on the news front, but it's also like it's an unsettling quiet. So that said, let's dig in with some chiptunes. We finished our top 40 last week after at least a year. So I popped over to Battle of the Bits to see what was going on. Very Rare Formats 2 is getting ready to close. The Very Rare Formats competition has got like 6 days left of entry. So I'm combing through what's been submitted thus far. And I figured let's take a look. We've got Ascension from Ashes. This is from AM4N. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. More when we come back. So the Evercade, I went from not really being interested to head over heels with the prospect of Evercade. I got to be clear about this because my machine has not showed up yet. Let me tell you what happened. I always thought that the buy-in was too high to get into Evercade. Okay, you pay $100 and you get this machine that runs off of cartridges, and then all the cartridges need to be rebought. And you look at what's on them, and a lot of them are like ROMs that you could just go download. And I thought, well, what's the point of that? Even though, yes, it's cool that you can get them, you can get them legitimately, which is, better than just downloading something illegally off the internet, which is, is great. I didn't see, like, it had to innovate somehow, and that stopped me from getting into it. But then they came out with these, I think they're called Super Pocket units, smaller handheld, because there already is an Evercade handheld, smaller handhelds that have a handful of games built in, and they're much cheaper, $60 as opposed to $100. All right, fine. So I got the Taito one, and it's supposed to ship November 20th, I think, so I'm still a couple weeks out from that happening. And while I'm waiting for it to show up, I ordered a couple of cartridges. Right here on my desk, I've got Data East Collection, Renovation Collection, Worms Collection, Sydney Hunter Collection. That's 4 cartridges with a total of like 25 games when you round it all together. And I got really into the idea once I started ordering some games, because my big problem with the Evercade was that now that they're using physical cartridges, now you have to deal with rarity again, and that kind of turned me off. It's not as bad as I thought. Yes, it's still an issue, but the vast majority of the Evercade library is still available, even though the ones that are older, prices have gone up a little bit. Now, I said vast majority, but not all. One Evercade cartridge that is nowhere to be found, not even on eBay, is the original Technos Japan collection. And I don't have the games list in front of me, but I can tell you that it had River City Ransom on it. Yes, one of my 3 favorite games of all time, River City Ransom for the NES, is on this collection. To name a couple others, River City Ransom, Double Dragon, Super Spike V-Ball, Crash and the Boys Street Challenge. So a lot of the classic Technos Japan stuff, pre-Trade West. And really, really cool cartridge. Nowhere to be found. There's a Technos Japan arcade collection, not the same thing. So that's kind of a bummer. But anyway, the point I wanted to get to was I noticed a couple of the cartridges, particularly this cartridge, the Sydney Hunter Collection that just showed up. Now, I wasn't familiar with that name, and you probably aren't either. But it's a collection of 4 games that are not old by any stretch of the imagination, but were newly developed for old hardware. So there's a Sega Master System game, there's a couple of Nintendo games, and there's a Super Nintendo game. But they're all developed 2017, 2018, 2019, and they look like Spelunky games. And so that was a different story altogether, because now we're talking about a physical copy of brand new games, a couple years old, but to get physical copies of brand new games now, they're usually like $50 or so, or more. If you get them cheaper, then you're probably getting them off of AliExpress. I know in particular the Game Boy is going through a boom right now. If you go to AliExpress, there's a ton of like GB Studio games that you can get cartridges for, but nobody who had anything to do with those games is getting paid for it. So here we have an example of new games that I can purchase physical copies of on the level, which is really cool. Another great example is the Home Computer Heroes collection. It's got a lot of like C64 Amiga games that have come out in the last 5 years. So yeah, I'm incredibly psyched up about this. I've got this stack of Evercade games and no system to play it on. Oh, there goes my phone. No system to play it on. My handheld ships in a few weeks, and so I got weak, and I was like, all right, forget it. I'm just ordering the Evercade. I ordered the console, which comes with another 2 cartridges. And that thing should show up on Tuesday, and this is being recorded. Yeah, it shows up tomorrow. So yeah, there you go. There's my next week is is Evercade stuff. So that should be. I'm really looking forward to that. Now, while this was going on, over on the forums, Hemrock posted the comment, and I don't have it in front of me. We'll read it later in the failbag, but the basic gist of the idea was, why don't we put a freeze on purchasing games for November and just see what happens? I love the idea, man. It's a really good idea. It's really like pro-consumer. Check out what you have, because I personally think it is an act of discipline to like be content with anything in life. So if you want to be content with your games, you have to exercise that act of discipline and like, all right, I'm gonna sit down with my games, see what we have, and just be. And it's not just, this doesn't just relate to games. It's like whatever it is in your life. If you want to be happy with things, then it's something you got to put effort into. Some people have to put in more effort than others, right? I'm not dumb. I understand that inequality exists, but I'm just saying this is one of the ways you can curb the need to continuously consume more and more games pointlessly. So I thought it was a great idea, but it came at a bad time because, again, just got into Evercade, and not only that, he also explained the way Evercade games work is you have to pre-order them when they come out if you want them. Yes, the majority of them stick around, but the prices go up. For example, 2 cartridges that I really, really want are the Commodore 64 cartridges, Volume 1, Volume 2. They weigh in at like $25 to $30. And a lot of the cartridges that I have like a year on them or so, it's $25, $30. So, if you want the stuff, if something's coming out now, in the middle of a buy freeze, that whole fear of missing out thing kicks in. And it's like, oh dear. Haven't felt that in a while, but here we go. Anyway, so that's where I'm at with the Evercade. It's so far, it's been an exciting little ride. I'll let you know more about it when the system shows up. In other news, over on Steam, the Halloween sale came and went. And it was the first time I ever saw a Steam Halloween sale that did not make the front page. They didn't have a special front page for it. In order to view the Halloween sale, you had to click in to the banner and see it there. And instead they offered, you got a new sticker or something. Okay. I got almost nothing from that sale. I still don't think I've willfully missed a major sale. So I picked up like a couple of dollar games, but nothing big. People commonly say, "Oh, it's the worst sale ever. It's the worst sale. Every progressive sale is worse than the previous year." And I've always thought, or I've long thought, I won't say I've always thought this, but I've long thought that this is, like a consumer trap where the sales don't always get worse. It's just that the more games you have, the less there is that you want. And it becomes more of an issue about good games coming out than it is about, the sales being good or bad. So this is like a tangible evidence that the sales might not be as good as they used to be. One game that I picked up that I absolutely loved was called Living the Nightmare, which is a game that I would describe, if I had to describe it in one sentence, it's a turn-based hex crawl version of Splatterhouse. You play as a monster, you're killing other monsters, you've got a mask like a dime store Jason, just like the guy from Splatterhouse did, very much like Splatterhouse, except rather than get to the end of the stage, you're like, kill X amount of monsters for the shrine to show up, touch the shrine, kill X amount of monsters, then the boss shows up, and then all the while, you're gathering different equipment, different bonuses, different masks, different power-ups that make you behave a certain way. So it weirdly, like aesthetically, it looks a lot like Splatterhouse, but it plays a lot like a traditional roguelike almost, minus the stage exploration. So I don't know. I really, really liked that game, and especially for the price point that it has, we're talking about a very inexpensive game. Regular price $2.99. I was able to pick it up for like $1.15 or $1.25 or something like that. Really, really cheap. And it's been great. So $1.15, and I've put, according to Steam, 2.7 hours into it. So the way I calculate value versus time spent, I got my money's worth on that game already, and I have not put it aside. I'm still enjoying it. So that's Living the Nightmare. One game that I did not even consider picking up was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a game that I was super hype about when it first came out. And lo and behold, the player count just bottomed out. And they're having issues with hackers. The game isn't getting updated as fast as anyone would like. And one common thing I'm hearing from the player base is, hey, this is just like what happened with Friday the 13th. And it sucks because I really wanted the best for that game. I did. And it looks great, but definitely not at $40. And I know by the time the price comes down on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, then it'll be too late for that game. So a bit of a bummer on that one. So what have I actually been playing? Not much, because we've had health issues sweep through my house, and everyone's okay, but I'm spending most of my time round the clock providing care for my family. So there's not a lot of time to play games. So this brings a great question. What do you play when there's not a lot of time to play? Which I think is always a question worth asking, because the older we get, the more we have to, we've got to be adults, as much as we don't like to be. And it becomes a meme. Hey, I'm going to buy this awesome game. I'm going to put it on the shelf. It's going to look great. I might even glance at it once in a while. So what have I actually been playing? Well, I've got... Jeez, that's such a hard question. I've got a few programs that I've been working on in Pico 8. And I haven't had time to work on them yet. But among them is a demo for a game that has no title. It's just a stock market simulator. And it's heavily influenced by Cookie Clicker. If you've ever played Cookie Clicker, there's a mini game in Cookie Clicker that unlocks after you've been playing for a few days, where there's like a stock market. You can buy and sell cookie stocks for different things, and the prices go up and the prices go down. I just wanted to isolate that bit of the game and get rid of all the rest of it. Just play that. So I talked about this over on the Alex Swingel's gang of folks. I have a working game with 5 different make-believe companies, and you start with $50, and the stocks go up and the stocks go down, and it's fully functional. And the reason I consider it unfinished is because as you make your trades and collect profits, there's nothing to do with the money. And that's a big problem if you're doing a stock-based game. So I have plans to go back and add like a slot machine or maybe like a blackjack game, and then have like a bunch of upgrades you can buy for yourself that maybe don't even really do anything. But there has to be a way to spend your money. But that said, I have that on my phone, okay? So the way I open this thing up quite a lot and just like do some trading and then close it up. I think that as far as the trading of the stocks is concerned, I've really hit the nail right on the head, at least where I wanted it to be. I've made the game that I wanted to make. So I've been playing that off and on quite a bit. When I have just a few moments, I'll pull that out. And it has been a halfway decent time. I also spent some time with Romance of the Three Kingdoms. I bought Romance of the Three Kingdoms 1, 2, and 3 on Steam, which is something I didn't think I'd do again. These are Koei strategy games from the 80s, and they are not in English. And the best part is the 3 of them, they have English counterparts you can play, particularly like number 2 I have on the Super Nintendo, like authentic. I bought it at Tigerfest last year. Number 1's on the NES. Number 3 is also on the Super Nintendo. You can get these games legit, but these versions, they're Japanese only. And it's interesting because I read that when these came out, at least the first one, Japan at the time had like the highest resolution monitors you could buy on a home computer. And the reason was because the Japanese characters required a higher resolution than we had in the West in order to display their text. So if you play Romance of the Three Kingdoms, the original one, which came out in the 80s, and you compare that to the MS-DOS games that came out in the 80s, there is a noticeable difference in resolution. It's pretty cool. And I have played this game enough with that I wanted to see if it could be played, even without any, I wanted to see if I could play it. I've got the screen translator on my phone, which works to some extent, but this is a game where you issue an order and then something happens. So as long as you can understand the numbers, which are all in English, and you can understand the list of orders, then more or less you can play. So I had a list of 20 orders. I went through and I translated them all. I went through all the questions it asks you when it launches the game, and I translated them all. I don't know how I found the time to do this. This is ridiculous. And I started putting together a guide where it's like, okay, if you don't speak Japanese, but you still want to give this game a shot, here's how you do it. So that's been me in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. All in all, it says I put 42 minutes into the game. Not a lot. But that's 42 minutes of translation work as opposed to actually playing the game. So that's a weird thing that happened. It's weird to see, like, when I have the littlest amount of time, some of the most, like, some of the most difficult work, I think, comes out of me. That's when my, RPG Maker stuff gets done and all that stuff. The one RPG Maker demo that I ever, not the one, but the first one I released, the Kolteka one from 10 plus years ago, I made that while I was in college, and I did it between classes. And I just remember sitting there on my tiny little laptop with just crushing anxiety from all the courses I was taking, just banging away, making events and stuff. It's very weird. When nothing's going on, it becomes hard to push myself. But so that's been a way to sort of harness that creative energy. And that's more or less what I've been up to. Another thing that happened is I hooked up my original Xbox. So I didn't get to play it much, but I've been putting off hooking up this thing for a long time. Now, you might remember I had a gimmick on the show where I was going through a big box of games that I bought at Tigerfest. And I got through all the PS2 games because I had a PS2 hooked up. I got to the original Xbox games and I stopped there. So hopefully I can return to that gimmick and we can go through it. But as of right now, it has become the machine that plays Cars, the Disney Pixar Cars racing game. Because my youngest son, who's 4, loves Cars. And that's perfect game for him. On an old console. And I can put it on and hang out with them, and it's in the room with all my other stuff, so my older kids can find something to do. It's a nice way for us to be together. So there you go. There's been my chaotic last couple of weeks or so. And well, boys and girls, we're about 22 minutes in. Let's take a minute to thank the sponsors. This is a Patreon-sponsored program, old tradition here on TCR. Read their names off in Hollywood. Distinguished gentlemen, they are EmeraldRangers.com, who hosts the show. We've also got Darabka, Hemrock, and Tecmo Balls. Thank you guys so much. I hope you're enjoying the party. Okay, so not much in the way of news of the past week, but I did see something that really caught my eye. And this is from TimeExtension.com, and it says, we're getting a full-size Amiga console in 2024 with a working keyboard. And this is amazing because one of the pieces of hardware I'd been considering picking up, and I know I talked about this in the last episode, was the Amiga Mini, the Amiga A500 Mini, which is just a mini console that has a fake keyboard on it, like the C64 Mini does. But it's really pricey. It's $115 compared to the $40 the C64 Mini costs, and that kept me from buying it for a long time. But I'm looking at this article, and they plan to release a full-size one in fourth quarter of 2024. So we're talking like an entire year away from now. But that's amazing. That's really, really cool. I'm hoping that this is something that, first of all, they did this for the Commodore 64 in 2019. And at the time, it was, you could get one for like $100 or like $150. And now it's $300. And I feel like I kind of missed that one. Let's look on Amazon and see what one costs. C64 Maxi. Bear with me. Yep, C64 Maxi with joystick, $299.99. Brutal. That's one I feel like I missed the boat on. But because of that, if they do that with the Amiga, I got to get that right away, man. I got to snatch that thing right up because it won't stick around. Because I would like to see the world of Amiga opened up I like to hang out on indieretronews.com. It's a little blog, has a lot of like, hey, here's a really old game that was, being developed for a really old system, and most of it is pre-8-bit stuff. Actually, all of it is pre-8-bit stuff, right? That's where, hey, new game. This is the latest article they have. Time Slip, a 1985-86 game by John Williams, arrives on the Commodore 64. Brand new thing. There's the source, there's the download. And there's the systems that I see the most covered that are getting the most new games. MSX gets a ton of new games, and Amiga gets a ton of new games. And then Commodore 64 is like a distant third. But there's still a bunch of new stuff coming out. And then rarely to never do I see MS-DOS stuff on indieretronews.com. But that is a great site. So there you go. That's a thing. All right, so this is about the part where I want to shift gears and do the fail bag, start looking at YouTube, see what people have been saying, looking at this Discord and see what's up. But I wanted to take a minute to pop over to Emerald Rangers, and you can see that there's a new Beastcast. Beastcast episode 70 is up. So head over to emeraldrangers.com. This is Sean's podcast, good old Gaming Beast. So pop by and give them a listen, because these don't come out very often, so we'll show our support. That said, let's jump over to the Discord and see what's up. Okay, we've got Discord open. Hemrock writes in, alrighty folks, do you ever feel like that you just buy games and never play them? Me. Well, how about a good old no-buy November? An about-face to the fear of missing out and consumerism that surrounds retro video games. Anyone want to join me in not buying a single video game during the month of November? Yes, that includes Black Friday. In the meantime, we can enjoy what we have. Sheryl Crow, of all people, said it well. It's not having what you want. It's wanting what you've got. Well, so my immediate response to that was, Black Friday, I'm buying a new computer. So I can't exactly do that. And we kind of went back and forth. And he pointed out, he said, from my calculations, you already have 15 games for the Evercade. You can play a new game every other day, and that's just the Evercade. Do what you want. Need to, though. So my Evercade collection, even just what I have here, because I have more games coming in the mail, I'm up to like 29 or something like that. So he's got a point. And I still am getting the PC, but I think here out, and today's the 6th, so from here out, we'll do a no-buy November, and we'll see how it goes. I'm sitting on, like all of us are, I'm sitting on a big pile of games that I can wade through, and we'll hopefully make some discoveries. We'll do what we can do. But on an unrelated note, he said, you asked me about Dark Cavern for the 2600. Played that game a bit tonight. Maybe I'm missing something, but it's not as good as I thought it would be. But listening to the Assault Rigs OST for PS1 made it a better experience. Yeah, it's a chase game where you get a gun, and in that, I enjoyed it. It's still an Atari 2600 game, and not one of the ones that will last throughout the ages. But I had a good time with it. It's an inferior port of, I think it's called Night Stalker for the Intellivision. So Night Stalker is the game that's worth getting. I don't know, man. I really enjoyed it, but it's Atari 2600, so you can never tell what will or won't hit. It's definitely flawed, but you do what you can. I will give that. How did you fare, by the way? I'll give that game a spin because he mentioned it. Excuse me, and I'll report back and see how it goes. Because I know nearly every other game we've played on the Atari 2600 together, I've just gotten destroyed at. He posted a score on the 28th of Spider Fighter 2600. It says, not his personal best, but that's my best performance from this evening on the Retron 77. And he has 19,800 points. I don't have that game, so I don't think I have that game. So I can't compete with that one yet, but it is there. And after losing the Space Invaders bout that we had, I'm looking to fight again in a new game. So we'll see how that goes down. All right. Big thanks to Hemrock for writing in and hanging out on the Discord. So let's shift gears. Let's jump over to YouTube and see what's going on in the friendliest place we call the YouTube comments. All right. YouTube Studio is open, and I managed to get it open without getting distracted by the YouTube homepage, which is very difficult. That's a feat for me, fighting against ADHD. Mechametis writes in, this is my import PS2 games. He thinks, did Koei produce anything like Uncharted Waters, New Horizons, post 16-bit? Also, yes, USA and slash NTSC PS2 games do have the logo printed on the underside of the inner ring of the disc. Yeah, I didn't know that until I saw it there. I think it looks, yeah, I know, it looks cool. I don't know. Wicked. It's something that just got lost in time. I don't remember it that way. I guess that's the Mandela effect. But right, Uncharted Waters, New Horizons, post 16-bit. So for context, I understand that of the Koei strategy games, that is the least like Koei strategy games. That is like the black sheep of their strategy game series. And it's also far and away the best one. So odds are not good of getting more games like that. Now, there is a newer version, like an Uncharted Waters or a New Horizons Online, and it is related to that game. It's supposed to be bad, so I didn't mess with it. But we never got like a PS1 game or like anything like that. That Super Nintendo game was sort of the pinnacle, which is unfortunate because it's an amazing game, and there was, I think, room to go back to that series. But I'm just glad that we got that one. All right, let's see. Desm101 says, 3DO had a few decent games, such as Road Rash, Gex, The Horde, Need for Speed, and Space Hulk. However, most of them got ported over to more popular consoles, such as PS1. Today, versions of Samurai Showdown, Primal Rage, and Super Street Fighter II Turbo are known for being impressive versions that made it to the 3DO. So its library is mostly just curiosities for those who want to check out obscure 32-bit games with way too much FMV. Lol. Man, I gotta say, Desm, I really did enjoy the weird FMV craze that was going on at the time. It's a little bit of an expensive curiosity, even now, but that if there was ever a phrase that made 3DO sound more attractive, that would be it. A little short this week, but doing what we can amidst some health problems here at home. And whatever it is that's going on in your home, good or bad, I hope you're hanging in there, because I'm rooting for you. And I'll see you next week.